The days are getting shorter, and you can feel it in the air. Yes, it's that time of year. Pumpkin is finally back at Dunkin'. It's the cozy you've been craving all summer long, now in your cup at Dunkin'. Pick up all of your pumpkin favorites, like the signature pumpkin spice iced latte, or a pumpkin iced coffee, and bakery items like pumpkin donuts and muffins. Sip into something comfortable to celebrate the start of cozy season. Use the Dunkin' app for contactless ordering. America runs on Dunkin'.
Ready for a career change but not sure where to start? Join the millions who have skilled up with Trailhead.
Trailhead has taught me so much more than I ever thought was possible.
Trailhead is the free, fun, online learning platform from Salesforce that empowers anyone to learn new skills for the new normal.
A career in tech is possible regardless of what your background is.
It's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Tap now to start learning for free or go to trailhead.com/start here.
The days are getting shorter, and you can feel it in the air. Yes, it's that time of year. Pumpkin is finally back at Dunkin'. It's the cozy you've been craving all summer long, now in your cup at Dunkin'. Pick up all of your pumpkin favorites, like the signature pumpkin spice iced latte, or a pumpkin iced coffee, and bakery items like pumpkin donuts and muffins. Sip into something comfortable to celebrate the start of cozy season. Use the Dunkin' app for contactless ordering. America runs on Dunkin'. The days are getting shorter, and you can feel it in the air. Yes, it's that time of year. Pumpkin is finally back at Dunkin'. It's the cozy you've been craving all summer long, now in your cup at Dunkin'. Pick up all of your pumpkin favorites, like the signature pumpkin spice iced latte, or a pumpkin iced coffee, and bakery items like pumpkin donuts and muffins. Sip into something comfortable to celebrate the start of cozy season. Use the Dunkin' app for contactless ordering. America runs on Dunkin'.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Ed Opperman, private investigator. Tonight we have, every Friday night we're here 5 p.m. Pacific time till 8 p.m. on freedomslips.com Studio A. And we're also going to start being covered, too, on Capricorn Radio on wakeradio.us. And always you can find our previous shows on our YouTube channel, the Opperman Report YouTube channel. Okay. Tonight, we're going to get right into it. We have with us tonight, where's my notes? Here we go. Mr. Stephen Jimenez, who's the author of the book, The Book of Matt, Hidden Truths About the Murder of Matthew Shepard. And Stephen's a fascinating guy. He's been in an investigative journalist for years and years and years, many, many awards. He's a 2012 Norman Mailer Notification Fellow, and has written and produced programs for ABC News, 2020, Dan Rather Reports, Nova, Fox, Court TV, and others. His accolades include the Writers Guild of America Award, the Mungerson Award for Investigative Reporting, and an Emmy, and several fellowships at the U Cross Foundation in Wyoming. Graduate of Georgetown University, has taught screenwriting at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts and other colleges. And he currently lives in Brooklyn, and I also know that he lives in New Mexico. Stephen, are you there?
I'm here, Ed. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. So, Stephen, can you tell us about your work in journalism in general, who you are and what you're working on next and that kind of stuff? And then we'll get into this whole the Book of Matt. The Hidden Truths About the Murder of Matthew Shepard, available on Amazon.com.
Sure, Ed. Pleasure. Ed, I really began my career working in documentary filmmaking. I did not study journalism or film as an undergraduate. I was in the Foreign Service School at Georgetown, and I was interested in both journalism and film, and I chose film, so that's really where I began my career. So it was initially working on documentary films for public television, then for network television, and I seemed to develop over time a specialty doing crime and law and justice stories. So back, I'd say 6-7 years ago, I worked on a Texas death penalty story with Dan Rather. Back in the 1990s, I produced a story for Nova on PBS. It was the first major television documentary that looked at forensic DNA typing when it was still a new science, and that program went on to be used by the FBI for training. So there have been a number of crime stories that I've worked on over the years. And, as you know, when I got involved with this story, I really went to Wyoming to write a very different story than the one I ended up finding.
Let me ask you this.
But
Going down to
I do
Wyoming.
have a background. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, who were you working for when you went down to Wyoming? On your own, or were you working for a network?
Well, no, I wasn't working for a network. This was a year after the murder of Matthew Shepard took place. The trials had recently ended in Laramie, and during the year that the case was going on, I followed news reports, but I wasn't in any way, I had no plan that I was going to do something about the case. But when it came to an end, the courtroom statements that were made, it was front page news around the country, and I really thought there was a story there, but I was thinking in terms of a screenplay. I contacted a producer, a friend of mine in Los Angeles. We've been looking for something, to work on together. I was teaching screenwriting at that point at New York University, and I told him that I wanted to go, begin doing some research. And obviously, the question that he asked is, well, from whose point of view will we tell the story? And I made that first visit to Laramie in February of 2000, so more than 14 years ago. And it was during that first visit that I met the prosecutor in the case, Cal Raruka, and found him to be, a very, very interesting and smart fellow. He'd been very reticent with the national media while the media was in town covering the case for a variety of reasons, which I can go into later. But essentially, I asked him, Ed, if he would educate me about the case, and he agreed to do that. So that began a long process. And in the prosecutor, I found someone that I thought would make a very compelling central character for, at that point, what was going to be, a screenplay for a made-for-television movie. And then about 8 months into that process, that research process, I began to realize there was more to the story than I knew. For the sake of, your listeners who may not know this, the entire court record in the Shepard case was under seal for a year while the media was in Laramie covering the case. All of the witnesses in the case, all of the principals, everyone that, worked in the courthouse, people that worked for the defense teams, law enforcement, everyone was under a gag order and couldn't talk about the case. So there was interest on my part in really looking through the public record, the police reports, the trial transcripts, the many documents that end up getting filed in a case of this, this size. So that's really where it all began for me, Ed.
Right. So you were able to get those records, or they were under seal for you too?
No. By the time I got there, they had just recently been unsealed. In early November 1999, Aaron McKinney, the principal perpetrator in the case, was convicted and sentenced to 2 life terms. After his conviction, the media packed up. The story was over. Right. And, it was after his conviction that those records gradually became available. So as I said, I showed up a few months later. It was in February of 2000. And began researching those records. And then, of course, that led to talking to people, first with the prosecutor, and then beginning to interview other people. So that began a 13-plus year process.
Let me ask you this. Wasn't it part of the deal that these 2 defendants made was that they gave up their rights to discuss this trial, to discuss the details of the murder in order to avoid the death penalty?
Well, there's a misunderstanding here. Okay. That was only the case with Aaron McKinney. Russell Henderson never signed such an agreement. Russell Henderson, there was a plea agreement that was made, and this was several months before McKinney's trial. This was in April of 1999. Russell Henderson was in the final stages of jury selection in the case, and under the threat of the death penalty, he agreed to change his plea to guilty, and he accepted a sentence of 2 life terms. Aaron McKinney, however, it was during Aaron McKinney's trial and following Aaron McKinney's trial that when it came time, when McKinney was convicted, and another thing that people may not be aware of is that Aaron McKinney was convicted on a felony murder charge and related charges of kidnapping and aggravated assault. He was not convicted. He was found not guilty of premeditated first-degree murder. But nonetheless, he was eligible for the death penalty. In Wyoming, there's a penalty phase. So basically, during the penalty phase, you can bring information and present it to the jury, information that would not have been admissible during the trial itself. It was at that point that an agreement was reached, a sentencing agreement, between the defense and the prosecution and Matthew Shepard's family, that Aaron McKinney agreed to certain terms. And one of the things he agreed to, excuse me, I'm just having a little bit of allergies here.
Oh, no.
But one of the things Aaron McKinney agreed to was that he would refrain from talking to the media about the case. Now, the conditions of that agreement were later questioned by constitutional attorneys, and including the American Civil Liberties Union, where questioning the idea that as part of a sentencing agreement, that Aaron McKinney would be consenting to give up his right to free speech. So it only happened with McKinney, to answer your question in a roundabout way, not to Henderson. So I was aware of that agreement and, sought out advice and ultimately felt that it was in the public interest for people to hear McKinney's side of the story. And, I went even and spoke with the prosecutor, who I'd gotten to know quite well. And, I certainly didn't want to bring legal problems on myself. And he said that he would not object as long as, Aaron McKinney was not being paid money. And I said, of course, he's not going to be paid money. So that's how that happened.
Well, it would appear, though, that trying to silence these guys would fall in line with your theory of the case and the information that you've uncovered. You know what I'm getting at?
I sure do, Ed, and I think that there's truth to what you're saying. Now the question then becomes, in whose interest is it for there to be a silence around certain areas of the case? As I said, information could have come out in the penalty phase. It had not come out earlier. One of the items in the book that has been discussed quite a bit is the personal relationship that existed between Matthew Shepard and Aaron McKinney, his killer. And that is something that was never brought out before. It was never brought out in a single news report at the time. It did not come out during the trials. Really, the first time that was brought up was in 2004 in a 1-hour story that I did for ABC News 2020 that took a second look at the case. And in that report, and then of course I go, there's quite a bit more in the book. There are a number of sources, named sources, who acknowledged that they had socialized with Aaron McKinney and Matthew Shepard together. So that really alters significantly the accepted public narrative at the time. And just to remind your listeners, when this crime occurred, this was in October of 1998. The story was that Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson, sort of characterized as a pair of, homophobic rednecks, walked into a bar in Laramie, and they saw Matthew Shepard, who, was well dressed, appeared to have money, and was obviously gay. And they decided to target him because he was gay. And that was